Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. Hope you had a great weekend. Well, bright and early, well, almost, it is 10:30, but you know what I mean. Kicking off for the week. And our guest this morning, Dr. Jide Johnson, Deputy Provost, Nigerian Institute of Journalism. As always, thanks a million for coming on.
Good morning on this morning.
I like that. Thank you very much. And Mr. Eniton Ulukoto is a journalist and public affairs analyst. Thank you as always for coming on, Eni.
Good morning.
Indeed. Well, starting off unfinished business, and we got to finish matters. There's some supplementary elections coming up. Wednesday will be the day. Give me your overview, because there were complaints. On the one hand, in the case of Rivers, for instance, process was fraudulently suspended according to APC, even though they don't have a horse in the race. APC is not on that particular ballot. And the PDP says, hey, Rivers has been our state from 1999. That's just one, just sticking out there. So it looks like the controversy continues right up into election day.
Yes, of course. And if you look at the Rivers case, it's quite peculiar. And what has been playing out in that state, should be a cause of concern, to every concerned citizen in this country. For instance, I think the opposition, AAC and APC in that state had complained, about the substitution of coalition, officers across, across the state ahead of the election. And I think if the opposition is complaining that the coalition officers, INEC coalition officer that that will supervise the election in that place, are members or allegedly members of the ruling PDP in Rivers State. I think INEC should look at that critically, and see if there are, facts and test the veracity of that allegation. But we haven't seen that. For instance, when the ruling party PDP complained about the deployment of soldiers, we saw the way military, the Nigerian army, intervened, and they made a statement concerning that and made a lot of clarification, as regard that. And again, if you look at the suspension of an ongoing process and you want to resume, after about 14 days or close to 2 weeks. Now, so there are so many germane questions, fundamental questions that should be raised. Number one is that what has happened, to the result collated so far? How can we vouch, for, can we say those results have not been tampered? That is one. And again, I read recently, because I've been following a lot of things, and it is good. The governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, has been, boasting that he has already won the, I think, 17 local governments out of 23.
According to his collation.
According to his own collation. And INEC has not come forth, with any results and all that. So to us, it gives us a very serious concern. That, and Rivers, if you look at it very well, if you look at the trajectory, the history of voting election in Rivers, it has always been like a war-like kind of a scenario. Now, if the INEC, the electoral umpire, should create an atmosphere, that will further worsen the precarious, security situation we have in that state, I think it is something we should all rise again. And all the indications, all the things we have seen leading to the election, and even during the election and after, it is pointing to that fact that we might be heading towards a very serious, security problem in that state.
Okay. Jide, well, that's how Eni takes a look at all the parameters and comes up with a sort of a suggestion that we need to be concerned. Are you as concerned, or are there aspects of this that one can put down to the whole boxing championship, champions talking quote-unquote trash just before the elections by way of psychology?
I think that INEC needs to assert itself in terms of what its constitutional role should be. And if you have read statement from, I think the only mistake I made concerning the statement which they released with respect to Rivers State election was not detailing the 17 out of the 23 local government results that they have verified and they have ascertained that those results are intact. I think they should be transparent enough to let everybody know what those local governments are. And if you read in that statement, INEC did not mince word in questioning the role of military and talks concerning that that election. Rivers election is a litmus test for every one of us moving forward as regards what should be the role of the military when it comes to us conducting election, who has control over the security when it comes to the election. And like, if you have ever been involved in politics, if you do the election, the results of all the election, they are there. The moment the elections are concluded in the polling unit, aggregate of polling units makes a ward. Aggregate of wards makes a local government. And aggregate of local government makes a state. So the actual election takes place at the polling unit. And once you have the result of the polling unit, you have an aggregate, and you have the aggregate score of the polling unit, then you have the total score of the entire election. So it's easier for you to say whether you have won the election or you have lost the election before the official declaration of the result, because at each of the polling units, it is expected of each party to have an agent, to sign the result. The result are generated from the polling unit, not at the collation center. So the result comes from the collation unit, and it is that result that comes from the collation unit, authenticated by the presiding officer and the party agents at the polling units, that are aggregated at the ward level, that are aggregated at the local government level before the declaration of result. And INEC set up a panel to investigate that. I think INEC should be transparent enough, tell us the local government, release the figures that you have in your care, so that the people, in the midst of secrecy, assumption is inevitable. And assumption leads to rumor, and rumor creates crisis.
Well,
Yes.
I think I need to, speak to one or two things that Doctor raised. That if you talk about the deployment of the security, because I've heard that over and again, and the involvement of the military, allegedly. And if you look at Rivers State is quite peculiar. We saw soldiers on the streets of Lagos during that election, but you can't compare the antecedents, the election antecedents of Lagos and some other few states where soldiers were deployed to that of Rivers. We have seen over and again in Rivers State that there are some people who are not state agents at, who were thugs, who could, audaciously, confront the military and soldiers and others. So what we see, the heavy deployment of security, I don't think it is, because it won't be in the best interest of the ruling party, the government at the center. And if you heard the president very well, he said that he's not committed. He will not manipulate, the outcome of that runoffs nationwide. So no, the military, the president or the federal government won't descend that low, as to, deploying military to Rivers to compromise the will of the people.
No, that's not the impression I created.
No.
Moving forward, we must define what should be the role of the military when it comes to election. It must be defined. Okay. The Chief of Army Staff has set up a panel to investigate this. INEC came up with a press statement. Moving forward, we should be able to determine what should be the role of the military when it comes to the election. Right. Are you with me? That's moving forward. Nobody is indicting the military. Nobody is casting aspersion on the role of the military. Nobody is casting aspersion on what the president has done or has not done concerning that. But we should be able to determine what should be the role. Now,
if any at all.
If any at all. It has not yet been established. If it has not yet been established by the military hierarchy, but INEC in his press statement concerning the Rivers election, in one of the paragraphs, made reference to the use of the military and talks concerning the election. And if that happens in election is critical to survival of democracy. If that happens, it's an indictment of the entire security apparatus. Because it's an indictment of the entire, because there are intelligence. What do we have intelligence?
When we talk about deployment of the military, only one authority has the power to deploy.
I've asked the question that when it comes to the election, I'm participating in the election as a presidential candidate, and at the same time, I'm the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So I've asked the question, who has control over the deployment of security when it comes to election? Moving forward, these are the issues we need to address for us to have a proper democracy. For us to have it. Moving forward, these are the issues we put before the 9th National Assembly. That when it comes to election...
Because speaking about rivers for now, the state is, as you said at the very, very beginning, it is what it is. When it comes to elections, it's known to be no walk in the park. Surely there is responsibility still to maintain law and order in the face of whoever might be thinking otherwise. Now, this is a very, very delicate situation because, as Jide is pointing out, on the one hand, there are interests. The ruling party is in power, and that is the ruling party for the moment that has the commander-in-chief. Jide was trying to talk about where does ultimate responsibility lie, especially the responsibility to not let law and order break down. And so maybe this is why rivers, out of all the other places where we will be doing supplementary elections. Why it's something of a hot potato.
Yes,
You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If the president were to take all, that he was criticized for nobody and for everybody. If he were to adopt that same attitude and said, look, let it be.
You can't.
You can't.
No patriot.
You can't do that.
No patriot will actually do that in this
case.
Yet
if you go in, people are ready to jump on you and say you're trying to, benefit your own side.
You just have to take a decision in the general interest of the larger populace. So if you do the profiling...
A fair decision.
Exactly.
That can be explained transparently.
Yes, of course. Now, if you do the profiling of the utterances, of the incumbent governor in Rivers State prior to the election, I think any government at the center should be very serious of that state, should actually take extra precaution. And that is exactly what they have done in this case. And there were allegations that even the governor went to Obiakpo in the local government, that is the governor's local government, with us on the day of election to allegedly tamper with, the process and all that. So these are all allegations and all that. And again, Dr. Jide said something about the secrecy of INEC, in releasing the results they have collected so far. If you had collected 17 local governments out of 23, and you are yet to, release the one you have already that you have ascertained to be true, and you suspended the process, just for you to come back, barely almost 2 weeks, and say you want to continue with the process. So the question, there is no serious stakeholders in this process that will not raise questions as regard the safety of those collected results and all that. And there have been these allegations over and again in Rivers. The opposition AAC and the APC are alleging that the Rex of Rivers is a member, can't carry member of PDP. Ditto for I think about the collation officer that were substituted.
In every state.
I said allegation.
Let me tell you.
I said allegation.
Out of place.
Allegation, yes.
Allegation.
Do your investigation very well. It is not out of place. Listen, Uncle Yori, let's be fair. Our responsibility is to the Nigerian people. Our responsibility is not to any political party. Parties will come, parties will go. Politicians of Nigeria have said it over time. They are chameleon. Today they are in this party, tomorrow they are in the next party. And it's just a matter of time. By the time this government forms, you see them jumping ship. They've already started jumping ship to where their bread can be buttered. Now, if you go to any state, and I dare to challenge anybody, you will discover that the list of ad hoc staff of INEC officials comes from the local government. From the local government. comes from the state government. The state government and the local government have a role to be still government. And it is the government in the state at a particular point in time listen, is INEC not a state agency? Is INEC not a state agency?
Yes,
INEC is a state agency. It's an agent of, you have INEC offices in the local government, yes or no?
Yes,
you have INEC in the state government, yes or no? INEC in the local government relates to the local government chairman. INEC in the state government relates to the state government. So what are we saying? If you do the investigation thoroughly, I can tell you that if you go to, in some states, you see that members of INEC working INEC ad hoc staff are members of APC. In some states, you see them, they are PDP. So people coming up with that, it's nothing new.
Of course, but
this is the standard practice of Nigerian political system.
But the point we are saying is that if a major stakeholder in that process, especially an opposition party, raised alarm that these people who are supposed to be an unbiased umpire, in this, process, are aligned, with certain political tendency in the states.
Well, okay.
So what is expected of the INEC, the national INEC, is for them to review that. And again, the substitution of all these collation officers 3 days to the election, I think is something that should get that should be of concern. That is exactly what we are saying.
This issue will take to the National Assembly, because what happens, what is peculiar to Rivers is peculiar to Zamfara, is peculiar to Borno, is peculiar to Lagos, is peculiar to Ogun, is peculiar to all the states. If you know I have worked in the local government before. If you know the workings of government, you have an understanding. Prior to the election, after the election, the INEC officer for the local government is called the EU, electoral officer. The electoral officer, is domiciled in the local government. He relates with the local government chairman. When the process starts, there are money that comes to the INEC through the local government. So we want to do recruitment in I'm a local government chairman, for example. We want to do recruitment of INEC staff. You think I won't put people there? It's
a different. That is a different matter entirely. Because if you look at that, most of the people.
You shouldn't be playing your street with this matter.
I'm talking.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's talk about the hard doc, the sourcing of the hard doc for this exercise.
Yeah.
Most of them are, core members and some other people. So if you are giving an impression that INEC will probably, contact an interested party in the exercise for it to get its ad hoc, because that is exactly what it means. Because any local government in these states, all the local government belongs to a certain political party, even if you are serving as an interim or interim government. So there is no way INEC will go through that, will get his ad hoc staff through the political class pool.
Oh. And now you can't get into the civil service in Nigeria if you are not a politician.
And what
you
I'm
can't.
saying,
you can't get. Do they advertise? Do they advertise civil service?
If you don't have a sort of a recommendation or a note from somebody,
exactly.
That's what you're saying.
What we are saying is that now
service.
that the AAC and the APC has raised a land in Rivers, that the people who conducted, or the coalition officers, are allegedly PDP members. I think the INEC, in the interest of democracy, in the interest of justice and fairness, INEC should see to it and do investigation. Just like the military, set up a panel to investigate the alleged involvement of some of their men in the process in Rivers.
But in fairness to INEC, especially as we've seen them speak publicly through their chairman, any matter that was brought up has immediately been flagged for investigation.
But if
when complaints have come up, say fine, we're going to look into that, and where it can be, it's resolved sometimes before our very eyes.
I think, Uncle Yori, what we are doing, we are playing the ostrich when it comes to election matters. For example, can you get anything done? Can you get into the local government employment if you don't know anybody within the party structure,
affiliation or the other,
within the party structure?
If you're not known
often
from,
do they advertise jobs in Nigeria for the civil service? You see all of these things. These are issues we need to call for reforms for. These are issues because it is important for you and I to know that our election is free, is fair, and is transparent. That is when we can only make demands from the elected officials in terms of deliverable of democracy. But if I know that...
But free, fair, and all of that, that has been the objective of every right-thinking member of society.
Even God is partial. Who is not partial?
Well,
That's where fairness comes in. Tell me who is not partial. Even God is partial. Two twins, he had preference for one. We all have our preferences. We all have our biases. But that's where fairness...
Yeah, but that's the exact thing that a body like INEC is supposed to mediate. If you want weakness
now,
that you have cited...
Now, in situation whereby in Rivers State, for example...
That's why you have courts. That's why you have courts for civil society, and for elections you have INEC. INEC is supposed to work the straight and narrow.
Yes, of course.
Whoever's ox is God.
That's what INEC is doing in Rivers.
In what way? By resuming...
Did you read the resuming?
Mm-hmm. By resuming?
Now, the head of publicity on the day of the election, I was on set, came and spoke about how they're having challenges with the election in Rivers State. Then, he alleged that the military are stopping them from doing their job. He apologized to the Nigerian Air Force. There was a statement from the local, from Rivers State INEC. Then 3-4 days later, INEC at the national level, this statement is in the public domain. I can bring it out in my phone. Condemned the use of military and thugs in the election. It was there. We saw footage, whether amateur videos or what, of soldiers stopping even INEC officials from assessing of doing their responsibility. And I said that what we should do moving forward is for us to determine what should be the role of security agencies. Our democracy should not be militarized. It's in the interest of anybody. It is with party A today, it might be with party B tomorrow. Even the ruling party went to court to challenge the use of the military, and they got a substituting court order to that effect. What role does military have in election? I'm asking that question. There are other elections in other climes, with the exception of Nigeria and Egypt and Africa. That's where you see the role of military. Military has no business, and we must all condemn it. It's important for our sanity and for our democracy in this country.
But Jide, are you saying that, look, knowing the lie of the ground, where we are at now, where INEC cries out, some politicians cry out that all the problems of elections are created by dubious politicians?
They know them. They know them. Why can't our institution deal with them? Uncle Yori, they know. We all know the troublemakers. We know the troublemakers. They know them. They know the political.
The law. He
who
alleges must prove. And oftentimes that's a real tall one.
Uncle Yori, now let me do an illustration of the election. We have the elections. We have security agencies being present in the morning, and the real election takes place during collation. Now, by the time, I use Lagos as an example. There are 20 local governments in the 5th schedule of the Constitution, 37 SCDs, but it's 20 that's recognized by the Constitution. So those 20 local governments are the local government that will declare the result. There are 20 local. How many police divisions do we have in Lagos? What of NCDC? NCDC is meant to protect critical infrastructure. During election is critical infrastructure. If you go to the local government collation center, hardly do you find enough security agents there. These are issues we need to address. Look, take for example the issue of Kanu. Thank God for the intervention. You knew what happened concerning one local government, national local government. The thugs were there, the deputy governor was there, until the quick intervention of the commissioner of police. Otherwise, we'll have had a crisis in our hand. Kanu is as volatile as Rivers when it comes to politics, because it's grassroots politics.
Your point seems to be we have to agree among ourselves what the role of the military, if any at all, should be. You're not saying that untoward situations have not been observed.
Yeah, exactly.
But the only way to clear the whole muddy waters is let's all agree military should be involved or not involved, or involved to this extent. 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50%, we should all know.
Yes, of course. And I think it is okay, for the nation to look at the parameters in which the military will get involved. But
you're still apprehensive about what obtains right now.
Yes, of course. If you look at it very well, I don't want us to...
You don't seem to trust that what INEC would want. Look, take us at our word. We are going to do the best that can possibly be done in this situation. You are saying that, look, it goes beyond that, right?
So if you look at it, INEC has promised over time and failed. I was there the other day and I was quite optimistic that INEC will perform wonders.
Because I've heard you also say.
Yes, of course.
We heard people say credit should be given to INEC.
So after the postponement of that exercise, but what played out, during the last, reschedule, election, actually give us some worry that are we sure that this INEC knows what he is doing at all? For instance, here in Lagos, Koshofe local government here, did not, but election materials and some other things did not get to the local government until about 3 p.m. So what we are saying is that we cannot actually take the words of INEC as it were.
To run an institution like INEC is a logistic nightmare.
That's why we need to
my point.
I think INEC is also, I think N is also aware of that fact. The logistical
nightmare.
Well, okay, he's called it a nightmare, but it is one humongous logistics exercise.
Yes, of course.
And so when there are things that are off a bit in terms of timing, I don't know if you can say
timing.
This is an example of INEC.
No. If you look at it,
not being sure of
timing,
what it's about.
When we are talking about the timing, if you are talking about 1 hour or 2 hours delay, it's quite understandable. But not talking of an election that is supposed to start by 8,
yes,
and you are starting by 3 p.m.
Now, for example, just so I can understand the point you're making, for example, this particular single incident that you cited, So what is the concern? That, look, is it that they are sloppy? Is it that they don't care? Is it that they were twiddling their thumbs? Is the allegation they just were relaxing when they should have been hard at work? It's none of that, I'm sure.
Yes, of course, but if
it's none of that.
It appears so.
Please let him land.
You
think part of it was on seriousness?
Exactly, it appears so, because if you look at the vis-a-vis what happened in Rivers, what I'm saying is that even if you have the collation officers, from the local governments in Rivers, and the players in that exercise, it's just like a football, match, that, a team complained that the referee, is a member of the other opposing team. So are you still going to go ahead with that particular referee? Okay. So the APC, regardless of how true or false the allegation might be, they have already raised an allegation that the wreck in Rivers is a PDP member.
Okay. There's a call coming in. Good morning.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, Mr. George. Thank you for calling in.
Thanks, and good morning to you.
Good morning.
Uncle Yori, I beg to disagree with the argument that there should be no military involvement in our elections. Laws are made for men, not men for the law. Where the need arises to use the military should be used. In a situation, Kuyori, where you see a sitting state governor who is a contestant in an election, brandishing cutlass, threatening to kill anybody that stands on his way, you cannot fold your hands and allow people to die unduly. In the 2015 elections that brought Governor Wike to power, 83 people lost their lives. There is a panel report that indicted the governor in their killing. You want the government to sit back and allow another 5 people to be killed because somebody wants to be elected as governor? That, in my view, should not be allowed. Where the military needs to be used, they should be used. Because the safety of life and property is uppermost. In my view, even the elections in Rivers State should be made staggered. It shouldn't be held at the same time with other states. So that if you isolate Rivers, you can now deploy more security to that we are using in other states to Rivers, so that there will be concentrated security there. We cannot just be killing people because somebody wants to get elected. That's my view.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. You wanted to come in when Eni was speaking, but I wanted him to land.
When you blame INEC, it's the failure of the security, it's the failure of the state system. What is the infrastructural development of Nigeria. For example, can you move from London to France within a twinkle of an eye? Can you move within England, even the whole of Britain, within a twinkle of an eye, with the infrastructure and the technology provided? Now look at the infrastructure and the infrastructure provided for INEC to function even before the election. We now isolate that responsibility. We now place it on the foot of INEC alone. I think it will be unfair to blame INEC for the failure of the state system in Nigeria. However, INEC has his own share of the blame. Now, responding to what George said, nobody is saying the military should not be involved in politics. Nobody. In fact, you know, I've even advocated that we should allow the military to vote during the election through absentee ballot. Because if you vote in the process, you will defend the process. If you're a stakeholder, but you know, in Nigeria, most journalists don't vote, most security people don't vote because they don't participate in the democratic process because of their essential duty. These are the reforms we need too. Because if I had voted as a military officer and I have my own biases and I'm posted to a particular place and then someone is trying to manipulate the process, I will defend it.
Okay.
That's what I say. So the military role should be defined. Then we should also understand that we have the normal policing system. We have the DSS, we have the police. Are we saying those institutions are non-existent? They are non-functional?
Uncle
Tell
Yori,
you what, you know what? Let me take a quick break. Hold the point. Hold the thought, please. I'll come right back and I'll begin with you. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Still in the studio of Dr. Jide Johnson, Deputy Provost, Nigerian Institute of Journalism, and Mr. Enitan Olukotun, journalist and public affairs analyst. We're looking at the upcoming elections in view, and the whole question, and we're still taking your calls, by the way, and the whole question of whether or not, or the extent of quite frankly, the military. It's something of an aberration, people know. But then each person will have their own situation, but it must be addressed in that way. Yeah, people go to the US, people go to France, people go wherever. They don't see military out in full force when we have elections. But then this is a different climb from that. But you wanted to make a point on
yes, of course. That. Now, we need to look at the involvement of the military and other security agencies in the election, vis-a-vis, the desperation, of the political class we have here. So you made mention of the U.S. and the, and France.
Not usual.
Exactly.
To have soldiers out because there's an election.
Yes, of course, because if you look at that, their own democracy has evolved over time.
Okay.
So the
problem is that we have not developed or evolved, if you want to use the word, up to that extent yet.
Even if you look at it, the desperate because of, the reward attached to political offices are quite too huge that politicians will go for broke just for them to get elected.
In other words, President Obasanjo's do or die affair.
No, well, I wouldn't go to that extent.
Not as bad. But when you go for broke, going for broke is do or die.
And that is exactly what happened. Look at the case we had.
Reverend Dominic is on the line. I'll come back to you if need be. Good morning, Reverend Dominic.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Fortunately, I cannot see you because power just went off right now. But let me talk. I can hear you.
We can hear you, Dominic.
Okay. Let me, Mr. George has agreed with Dr. Jide. And let me agree with Dr. Jide in the other argument of how we recruit our local government staffs and INEC staffs. Let me give you a point to bolster his point. My senior brother was sometimes a local government chairman, deputy chairman in Lagos. My own senior brother was sometimes a deputy local government chairman in Lagos. Let me show you how they do the recruitment. They gave him first month of recruitment. Two was for admission in the university, which they are the parents, they'll stay in their local government. You will know the local government now I'm talking about. Now, what Jide is saying that there is no state you go, you will not have state affinity, local government affinity from one staff or the other. what we have to do, if you ask me, is if those people are genuinely want to do the right thing or the wrong thing. That's by the way. Number two, I want you to answer me this genuinely. If you are made direct, the chief returning officer of governorship election in River State, and they told you are not going with a security man, will you be the returning officer? Just answer me genuinely. They say you are going to River State by next week for rerun. We are going to be the returning officer, one of his friends as the returning officer professors. And they say, Jide, you are not going with any army, you are not going with any security because it's a civil, work or civil practice everywhere. Will you go there?
Okay.
That's one thing.
Your point is taken, Dominic. Let's come back to studio. Thank you.
Let me answer him briefly so that he can conclude his thought. It's simple. A situation whereby the security agents are even preventing me from doing my work. Then how will I do my work? There have been allegations concerning that, to that effect. That if the security are going to enhance my work, then definitely why will I not use the security? Why will I not use the military? We are saying that the military should not be used to perpetuate or inhibit the process, the electoral process. That's why nobody is saying you shouldn't use military. Now, but we must define. We must define. We saw how tanks were parked in front of some local government, and they hindered. You saw the tanks.
Let's go to the subtle point that you are making, and I know that the subtle point you're making in there that the military should not be used. Stay with not be used.
Yeah, exactly.
Only who can use the military? Who can use the military? You see, this is where the problem comes.
Exactly.
And this is where the whole suspicion comes.
I think
the opposition can't use the military.
The election, I said it. I was on set on the.
Is the military being used
for the election?
President Buhari has said no.
For the election of the local government, the EO should be the one giving the directives concerning the election.
But Dominic's question was that if you had to go, take over.
If I'm why would I not go with security? Is the military made up security alone? You have the DSS. You have the. I asked the question. If we had to resort to the army, that means that the DSS and other agencies have failed. The police have failed. In civilized life, it is the police that you use for civil disobedience.
Yeah, but the problem.
So we should equip.
Look, I don't know.
He talks about the larger picture.
The problem. We've always said that there are many situations, perhaps, where the police alone is overwhelmed. Unless the police is going to come out on election day as SWAT teams. If they're not going to come out as SWAT teams.
Then let us play us. We saw police and the military having argument in the rivers.
Okay, let me tell you, I don't want to lose Victor in Magodo. Good morning, Victor.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you very much for calling in.
Yeah, I think involvement of the military in elections, I think we can't take away involvement of military in elections. But I think I'm going to go with the man on on the left-hand side.
Who
says the man on suit, who says the involvement of military should be regulated.
Okay, that's
if
Dr.
military
Johnson,
is going to be involved in elections, I feel that the major duties of military is to defend our borders. They are not supposed to be within the civilians like that. That's why in civilized countries, you don't see military get involved in elections. So the military should, at least to an extent, except if there is a state of emergency, then they can be involved.
But Victor, in so-called civilized countries, as you said, you don't see pictures during elections of some people running off with ballot boxes. You don't.
Yes, sure.
You don't.
Sure.
You don't see it.
Yeah, sure. But what I'm saying, I understand what you're saying. You're saying that in civilized countries, we don't see, and Nigeria is prone to violence in such a way that, during elections, you see some people, because of their selfish interest, let me use the word selfish, because they have interest, and they want to get votes at all costs. You understand? So what I feel is the government should at least reduce the use of military in elections. Because, for instance, let me give you a perfect example. Myself, for instance, if I notice military in the polls, I won't even go for voting. Because yes, I won't go. Because I believe that the military, they are trained to defend the country, not to get involved in elections or civil matters. It's like going to call a soldier, for instance, when you have domestic issues with your wife. I feel it's you scare away people when you see military. There are some people that they get scared when they see military.
Yeah.
So I feel involvement of military should be regulated, and it should be, I think they need to work on it.
Thank you very much for calling in, Victor, which goes to the point that Dr. Jide Johnson was making, that we have to make up our minds, we have to agree, what do we want exactly? Take it to this, is it the 9th Assembly coming up?
Yeah, yes, of course. So I think it is good for the 9th Assembly to, look into all these suggestions, but be that as it may, if you look at the development...
How about that? Sorry, sir.
Because
how about that little point about, no matter how much we want it, how well can the police alone do, bearing in mind the fact that...
But the truth of the matter is that police are usually, overwhelmed during the election. Because if you recall, you don't expect a police officer who is just holding a baton, at the polling units, like what we saw in a video that went viral on the social media, something that happened somewhere around Okota. You saw the policeman trying to, get the ballot box, from the hoodlums and all that with bits, nothing, whatsoever. So what we are saying...
Because when you have barefaced, when you have people who will, in a barefaced way, come out and do that which is not expected, pick up the ballot box and try to run with it.
That is
How
exactly
can you do that?
So if you recall,
will do that,
if you recall, in the build up
even
to
if it's an isolated instance.
I think sometimes around 2018, 2017, you will recall that the customs intercepted a lot of weapons. They were being smuggled they were being imported into the country. So those were the ones.
Those arrests, have they been prosecuted?
I'm coming.
Have they been prosecuted?
That's another issue entirely.
Yakub, thank you for holding on. Good morning.
Yeah, Chief Jerry, good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling in.
And then good morning to Dr. Jide Johnson and then Mr. Olukoso.
Good morning.
Chief Jerry, let me go back to what Mr. Olukoso said earlier when you started the discussion. A situation whereby opposition in the state complained that the coalition officer of the state is a member of one of the party. What INEC needs to do is to remove them and replace them. Why am I saying that? You could remember one time ago when PDP complained about Aminat Sakari, that it is in-law or whatever to Mr. President. What happened is that they relieved him to be heading of logistics and put her for another place. See, Chief Jerry, Mr. Jide was mentioned that military must not be using an order in our election. I dare to disagree with Mr. Jide Johnson at this point. You know why? Why? Because if they are not using military in the River State, Mr. George called earlier, says that 80 people died in 2015. Chief Yori, more than that could have been dying this time around. In my Dopemu locality here, Chief Yori, I will shock you with this. We fought in my police unit. Do you know that there was not even single police officer? And then we voted peacefully. Nothing happened. Every state has its own peculiarity. I disagree with Mr. Johnson this morning because our election has never been wrapped to a situation where the military will not be using. In the development area, developed countries are supposed to say that they are talking that they are not using military or police. Mr. Yori, in developed countries, there will not be ballot paper. Nothing. I can sit down in my office and voted in a developed country, not in Nigeria. We still need military in order for us to vote peacefully. Thank you, God bless.
Thank you very much.
This takes us to a deeper issue.
Yes.
What is the state of policing in Nigeria?
Yeah.
Which brings about another issue people have raised in terms of state policing and local policing. Why do people keep talking about the Kano State Commissioner of Police? He's a local person. He understood the culture, understood the dynamics. Now, when people talk about security, security is not the presence of soldier. If you see them, it's only in Africa that you see the president talking and you see a military man behind him. If the president of America, or the president, if they are talking, you won't see even a military man behind them. You even see them. But there is security. The presence of soldiers does not mean there is security. Security has to do with intelligence. What is the level of our collection?
But sometimes you have to admit it can have a deterrent effect.
Exactly. I know.
Can.
Now,
Victor just said that went too far. That if he sees military,
local,
is not encouraged.
In my local government, I've lived the way I'm living for more than 40 years. I know the local community. I can tell you, I know all the trouble spots. If you pick the police commissioner of Lagos, he can tell you all the trouble spots. They know how to go about it. It talks about us equipping our police and giving them the resources that is required
and training
for them to contend. Because I have said it, seeing soldiers on the morning of election, if you are old enough to have witnessed a military coup, the day of our election is like the morning of a military coup, where everybody is asked to sit down at home and go nowhere. And that's why we have low voters turnout. One of the callers said, the moment he sights soldiers, he won't go out.
You disagree with that, Eni?
I disagree with that totally, because if you look at the deployment of military, the soldiers here in Lagos, and the turnout we had in the governorship and the presidential election in Lagos, which was low, I don't think the soldiers caused that. We move freely. No soldier, no harassment of soldiers. So alluding to, attributing the low turnout of voter to the deployment of soldiers and security, I don't think that we actually hold water in this matter. However, if you look at, we have said it very well, there should be certain limits, to which the military, will be involved. But we're saying that the peculiarity of each state should be taken into consideration, and the president or the ruling party or the government at the center should not succumb.
So it shouldn't be same size fits all.
No, it can't be all.
You look at individual
it can't be all.
environment.
I'm coming.
And then deal with it accordingly.
Just look at what
so
Just said.
Just
said that over 80 people died in 2015.
So
if you do the profiling.
Let me bring Padio in Yola. Good morning, Padio.
Hello, good morning.
Thank you for calling in. Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I've been following your conversations, and my contribution is this. The use of military in the Niger Delta, I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
My reason is this. In the Niger Delta, the proliferation of small arms is so much such that these guys don't understand any other thing apart from the military. We've seen footages where policemen are being dragged during elections in these areas. So these people don't understand anything apart from military. You don't use military in front of Aso Rock. You don't use military in Alausa because these people are civilized. But in the Niger Delta, they don't understand anything apart from the military. And I think the use of military in that area is very much appropriate and welcome.
Okay.
Those against the use of military in those areas, because they use thugs. And these thugs don't understand anything. They don't fear anybody apart from the military guys. So if anybody is calling for not to use military in those areas, are people that are going around about during elections with thugs. But they don't respect police. They don't respect DSS. They don't respect all those civil authorities other than the military. So I think the use of military in those areas is appropriate. Those calling for we should regulate it, that is a regulation. Do we use military in front of Alausa? Do we use military in front of Aso Rock? We don't. So those peculiar areas, they should use military. I am very much in support of that. That's my contribution.
Well, all right, thank you.
Padio, from linguistic point of view, you said do we, it means that you have some degree of involvement. No one is saying that we shouldn't use military. Said going forward, it should be regulated. What should be the role of the military? The military should not be partisan, one. The military should not. Their loyalty is to the Nigerian people. Their loyalty
so why would
should
the
not
military be partisan? Why would the military be partisan?
You've had... Listen, we have listened, Uncle Yori. It's just that we are short on memory. Human beings are short on memory. We've had cases in Ekiti. There's what is called history repeats itself syndrome. What goes round comes round. Those that are in power today were complaining about the use of military yesterday. Those that are complaining today were the ones using military yesterday. Do we want to continue with that vicious cycle? We must regulate it. That's what we are saying. We must. It's a must. As a nation, we must regulate it. 2014 election.
Quite frankly, touche to Giri's observation.
The instance of Ekiti, the 2014 election, you can't compare the...
Oh my
no, I'm coming.
Someone that steal 5 naira and someone that steal 20 naira, they are still both thief. Don't justify what is unjustifiable.
My whole point is that the deployment of military in Ekiti in 2014 was unwarranted. Now, if you look at just like what Padio
That
said,
was
I'm coming.
warranted.
What Padio
2018 was
said,
warranted.
what Padio said, if you look at the volatile Niger Delta area, it is not where you still have what I call you still have heavy weapons, in the hands of most of these militants in that place.
Yeah, so
that's of a kitty. So you actually need the military.
Okay.
The police cannot.
It cannot do it alone.
They can't actually do it alone.
Let me quickly squeeze. I want to bring in Comrade Ayo. Good morning, Comrade Ayo.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
And good morning to our guests in the studio.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You see, Uncle Yori, the problems associated with our election boils down to two things: corruption and greed. See, the politicians are so greedy and corrupt that they want to get power by all means. Not because they love the people, not because they want to serve the people, but because they want to serve their pocket and their families and acolytes and friends. That is why we have this problem associated with now. See, INEC is trying their best to make sure our elections are free and fair. But the problem is with the politicians. They compromise everybody. They believe that everybody, whether in the military or in the police or in the INEC, has a prize. And because of our corrupt nature and greediness, then we have problems with our election. And those who are saying we should not bring in military in our elections, I know they understand what the problem is with our. See, the kind of people we are, because of the desperation of our politicians, they recruit thugs to do their biddings when they know they cannot win election.
Okay.
So they recruit thugs to make sure they win at all costs. And if you don't have the military on ground, the person who is afraid when he sees the military, he's just being mysterious with it. So honestly, he's really economical with it.
All right then. Comrade, thank you very much. We've run out of time, Comrade. Really appreciate your calling in. Really appreciate your call. We've run out of time. It's a contentious subject.
I'll close with this closing remark.
What is it?
If we cannot sustain democracy without the use of the military to conduct election, then there's no basis for democracy. Then we should go back to military government. Thank you.
Any?
Well, I have an objection to that. Military is not used to as a stabilizing force, for us to sustain our democracy. The military involvement in these elections so far, I haven't seen it as being excessive. As a matter of fact, it was needed, for us to have a peaceful, democratic process called
You just said the
election.
military involvement was indispensable to
Yes,
the successful conclusion
yes,
so far.
Of course.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Two widely, opposing points of view, but at the end of the day, you can probably find a way to bring both of them onto the table to go back to the whole point about let us agree what we want.
Regulation.
Let it be regulated. Thank you very much, Dr. Jide Johnson.
It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Journalism. And Mr. I almost said Dr. Eni Tolukoto, journalist and public affairs analyst. You people are doing like politicians. You people are, you fire on air, and then afterwards, exactly, APC, PDP, then they'll be shaking themselves as soon as we say goodbye.
There are two sides to a coin,
That's our program. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I'm Yori Folarin. Bye-bye for now.